What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode, and as promised, I've been talking about doing a review comparing the St. Croix Mojo Bass to the ALX ICO series rods, and today that is what we're going to do, so stay tuned. Alright guys, so the very first rod that we are going to start with talking about is the Mojo Bass, the St. Croix rod. I really do like St. Croix rods, guys. I'm from Wisconsin, and St. Croix rods are made in Wisconsin, so it's just natural to love a St. Croix rod. First thing, Mojo Bass rods. What I really liked about them and what turned me on to them was the price point. $120 to $140 for a really nice bass fishing rod, and what I really like about them is they also tell you what that rod is going to be best for, what application. So if you want to fish a jig, a swim jig, or a flip, throwing a frog, whatever you may be wanting to do with that rod, each rod is labeled what it's best for. So on these St. Croix rods, this is a 7-1 medium heavy fast action rod. This one is for jigs and other baits. It just says jig / baits. So, but I always threw a swim jig or a like 3/8 ounce flipping jig off of this, or a heavier Texas rig. Always worked great on this rod. One thing I really do love about St. Croix rods is, especially the Mojo Bass, is for the price point and the quality of the rod. It's pretty darn good. On this rod, you got your split grip cork handles. I do wish that this right here was a little longer. I mean, I do grab the reel on these rods, so I don't grab too much of the cork handle, but I do wish it was a little longer, but not a huge deal breaker. On Mojo Bass rods, they tend to come with 7 guides on them, and they're not micro guides or mid micro guides. They're just they're a little bit bigger guides, but you get 7 on them, or 7 on each rod. They may not be a huge deal to you guys, but the more guides you have in a rod, the smaller they are, generally the better cast you can make. So you'll notice that higher priced rods tend to have more guides and smaller guides, so that's really nice. Another thing you'll notice with the St. Croix Mojo Bass rods is they tend to have more tip to them, a softer tip. They're not as stiff, so that's one thing I will say. If you're gonna go with a brand of rod, I suggest you stick with one brand usually. I know I like to try different rods out, but I always say you want to stick with one brand rod, because then if you go from a medium power to a medium heavy, you know that you're jumping 1 power, or a medium heavy to a heavy. Some rods may make a heavy kind of like a medium heavy, or an extra heavy like a heavy. That's just how some rod companies are, so I like to stick with one rod company for all my rods. We'll see that the St. Croix, in my opinion, they have a little bit softer tip. Another thing with the St. Croix rods is they tend to be tip heavy, so when you're holding the rod out like this, it does want to drop on its own down. They are a little bit heavier than the ALX rods. I would honestly say significantly heavier. You can definitely notice the difference in the St. Croix rods compared to the ALX rods, and I'll show you guys that in a minute here. But they are a little bit heavier rod than the ALX rods. But the one thing I think I love most about St. Croix rods is the warranty policy, guys. I have broken like 2 or 3 St. Croix rods. And every single time that I've sent them in, all I've had to do is pay shipping to send it in, and then they've sent me a brand new one, no questions asked. All they ask that you do is you send in your rod. You gotta pay for shipping, but you send it in, and then they will ask for a little description of what happened, how did it break, and then after that they will send you a brand new one. I've never had them like call me and go, well, what exactly happened, anything like that. They've always just sent me a brand new rod. I really do love the warranty policy that St. Croix has. Now for the ALX rods, and now I'm going with the ICO series ALX rods. If you look on their website, they have the Zolo series rods, which is really their top of the line, or their kind of flagship rod, which are fantastic rods. But because I used Mojo Bass rods, they run from 120 to 140. The ICO series rods run into that same range between 120 and like 150. So they're pretty comparable price point, and I think that's important as well. I completely understand not breaking the bank on a rod. You generally want to buy a decent amount of rods, but you don't want to spend a ton on each rod. I mean, I'm personally not going to spend $300-400 on a rod. I just don't think it's really worth spending that much money on. But I think that these that range where you run from that $120 to $200 range is a great range for rods, and the Mojo Bass and ALX ICO series rods are perfect for that. Right here we have a 7-foot medium heavy fast action rod. I wanted to talk about my experience with both rods. Same thing. This rod I use for swim jigs, flipping jigs, and stuff like that. But What I love about it is I love this cork handle. This cork handle with a little bit of synthetic in there, but I do love how it's a bigger handle, it's a bigger grip, it's a split grip cork handle, but it's a little bit longer than the Mojo Bass, which I really like. I mean, I do grab the reel, like I said, I grab the reel, but there's a little more to grab onto on the handle, which I really, really like. The huge thing with the ALX rods, guys, is they are light. I mean, even with the reel on here and fully lined and everything, it doesn't want to drop on me. Like I said, that St. Croix rod is tip heavy. It just naturally wants to drop the tip. This does not do that at all. I'm telling you guys, these ALX rods are the lightest rods I have ever held. I mean, they are crazy, crazy light. And if you're fishing all day, casting all day, it's nice to have a really light rod. And I mean, that was my first impressions of the ALX rods is, holy crap, I can't believe how light these are. Like I said, I mean, they're just so light. It's like, it's just nothing there. They cast like a dream. And I just really love how light they are. I have noticed there is a difference between here. These ALX rods, they tend to have a little stiffer tip than the Mojo Bass rods. They're not as forgiving. That's why I suggest sticking with one rod company when you're picking a rod, because like I said, when I go from this medium heavy up to a heavy, it should be that exact power jump. Now, the Mojo Bass rods, like I said, there's a little more give in the tip. The ALX rods are a little more stiff in the tip. It just depends on what you prefer. I think that the ALX rods work just fine. I haven't had any issues with them. And same with the St. Croix. I mean, they're both very, very sensitive rods. I've had no issue picking up bites, anything like that. The thing I do love about the ALX rods, the Ico series, is there's 11 guides on these rods. There's 11 guides compared to 7 on the Mojo Bass. So in my opinion, I really do love that there's 11 guides on here, and these are mid-micro guides, guys, which they're smaller than the guides on the Mojo Bass rods. So I really love the fact that you get mid-micro guides on here, and you get 11 of them. It just helps with making a little more accurate casts to certain things and whatnot, but I really, really have been impressed with the ALX rod so far. There you guys have it. That is the two rods, essentially, the differences, what I like about them, what I kind of dislike about them. Overall, both of them are great rods. I think they both come in at a great price point. I'm not going to get into crazy specs on these rods, guys. I know some guys will be like, what's it made out of? What's this? What's that? Most rods nowadays, like I said before, are pretty comparable for the most part. It just depends on your personal taste, I think. Me personally, after being a hardcore St. Croix fan, and then getting to try out these ALX rods, I'm all ALX. I still do love St. Croix. I think it's a great company. Their warranty, you really can't beat it. ALX still has a really good warranty policy, guys. I'm not going to speak to what it is right now because I don't know it off the top of my head, but that was an important thing when I was looking at partnering with ALX, is what is their warranty policy. And when I read it over, it was a really good warranty policy. Please go check it out. If you have any questions on it, just go check it out on their website. It will be linked below. The ALX rods will be linked below. But like I said, preference wise, I'm a hardcore St. Croix guy. I always was. But when I got to try out these ALX rods, I really did a lot of research into them and definitely got to try them out before partnering with them. It wasn't like I just jumped ship onto these because of a deal or anything like that, guys. And you guys have seen my videos. If you want to see these rods in action, just go ahead and check out my previous videos, guys. I know I didn't lay any footage on here, but if you go check out some of my older videos, I've used these St. Croix rods. I beat the crap out of them. And so far this year, I've put these ALX rods to the test so far, and I'm going to keep using them throughout the year. And they've been great. They're just like I said. The ALX rod, in my opinion, is a lighter rod. I think for the price point here, the price point that you pay for the ALX rods, plus how many guides you get, and their mid-micro guides, and how light the rod is, I think when it comes out overall, I think the ALX rod beats out the St. Croix by a little bit. I think there's a little bit more quality, more craftsmanship that goes into the ALX rods than the Mojo Bass. Now St. Croix, they have a lot of different rods that you can go through. You go up to the Legend Extremes and stuff like that. So, but from here up, for the ALX rods, you can go up to the Zolo series if you really want more quality. And then they have some other higher quality rods, ALX studs. I have not got to use the Zolo series, but I've heard nothing but great things about them. But like I said, I wanted to use comparable priced rods. So when I went to partner with ALX, I wanted to make sure I was getting a rod that was comparable price to the Mojo Bass rods, so that it's cost effective for you guys. I don't want you guys to break the bank on rods. I don't want to break the bank on rods. Nobody does. There's plenty of stuff you got to buy for fishing. You don't want to blow it all on rods. There you have it, guys. That is basically my opinion on the rods. I will link ALX rods down below, and I'll also throw a link to St. Croix if you guys would like to go check them out. Either way, I think you get a great rod with either one. You really can't beat these rods for the price point. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like and subscribe, and until next time, keep fishing hard.